Welcome everyone to this webinar, the first webinar of the after season, so to speak, of the Plover Rovers Talking the Coast project. And we're going to have some exciting people talking here about migrating birds that come all the way from the icy north to the coasts of Kent to spend their time on the icy coast of Kent. Because I think we just figured out that we have someone, Rodrigo, coming to us from Iceland today, and it's about the same level of freezing in Iceland than it is in London right now. So so the birds that come here don't really get more warmth, I guess, out of it, at least not today. So our speakers today are, first off, Rodrigo, who is coming to us from Iceland. He's a Spanish environmentalist with a curious mind to explore the world. He used to work as a whale watching guide in South Africa, Argentina, and Iceland, and then he kind of got stuck in Iceland. And he has a keen inclination towards seabirds, and he is currently deciphering the secret lives of the Atlantic puffins in Iceland, analyzing their diet, their breeding success, and also, I think, monitoring their migrations. And he is also developing a citizen science project to monitor cetaceans around Iceland. So that's Rodrigo. Then he will be followed by Beatrice von Preussen. She's a nature artist, and she works with scientists exploring the natural world. She has listened to seals singing beneath the Arctic ice, which I absolutely love. She's been to Antarctica to collect samples, and this summer she's been a bit more local in Cornwall, where she was watching sea squirts and dolphins and discovering the wonderful world of seaweed. So yeah, seaweed, very inspiring. We had a great webinar with an artist who does seaweed art in Cornwall, actually. So that's up on our YouTube channel as well. So you can have a look at that. So there I was turned on to seaweed big time when she did her presentation. And then afterwards, we're going to hear Greg from Birdwise East Kent, who is an engagement officer with them, trying to raise awareness about bird disturbance on the coast, ways that we can work around to mitigate these disturbances. Of course, the coasts of Kent aren't exactly the most remote coasts in the world, so these sort of human-wildlife conflicts are something that we need to manage there. And he's also been volunteering with the Thanet Coast Project as a coastal warden for close to 8 years, so a veteran really. And he studied natural history and is also a photographer and a filmmaker. So lots of different input here. Again, science and art coming together, true to the mission statement of the Plover Rovers. So I'm going to hand over now to Rodrigo, and I hope that everyone's going to enjoy themselves.
Well, thank you, Scott, for this nice presentation, and thank you, everybody, also that is involved in this webinar. I think it's going to be really, really cool to be with all these amazing people. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Well, I have to be honest with you guys. It was kind of interesting for me to participate in this talk, because my experience, as Scott has advanced you, has been pretty much looking towards the sea, looking towards the oceans, with whales, with dolphins, with seabirds, puffins lately, also with some storm petrels, maxid waters. So I've been always looking more or less towards the ocean. So going through check which bird are traveling between Iceland and Kent and UK has opened a new field for me, mostly about waders. So I'm going to share this experience with you. First of all, I want to share with you where we are, or where I am located right now. This is, I'm in Iceland. In fact, I'm in the south of Iceland. I'm best manager working for the Nature Research Center here. And Iceland is a very popular destination, not only for birds, but also for tourists. More than 2.2 million of visitors we have last pre-pandemic time, back in 2019. We have a lot of places that people are going to see, like this waterfall, Skoga Falls in the south of Iceland. People are coming also during the winter time to check over the northern lights or the whales that we have around. In fact, you can see here a photo taken last winter with northern lights on the background of Etli Day. which is an island where we have one of our main bird research station. Here you can see what is called the most isolated house in the world, and the background of Eyjafjallajökull, which is the famous volcano that erupted in 2010 and pretty much paralyzed the entire traffic during a few weeks in Europe. And of course, from one volcano to another, and this one is Fagradalsfjall, the newest volcano that we have in Iceland, and it erupted last spring. I think it was in March, and it's been active until now, until September. Now it seems that it's been quiet for a few weeks, but you never know in Iceland. So you see that this is a very popular destination, but what about birds? Why they are choosing Iceland to come over? Why they are passing by? What's going on with birds? Well, first of all, we have to think about migration as a survival strategy. Birds are pretty much going from point A to point B because they are going to have more chances to succeed in the activity that they are involved. Iceland is traditionally a breeding ground, but we also have species that are coming over the winter and they are traveling from the far north, like for example, the little auk. It's also a guardian node in the middle of the Atlantic, if you see here Iceland, because we are connecting the Arctic with the rest of Europe in what is called the East Atlantic Flyway. We have a lot of birds that are coming from the west coast of Africa, also traveling through Europe and going here to the Arctic. So we are kind of in the middle. I'm going to be talking about the strategy that some of the birds are following, especially the ones that connect with Kent and Iceland. But I just want to give you an example of what a migration looks like. For example, the puffins, of course, I have to talk about puffins because that's what I'm doing right now. They have following different strategies. Instead of going to the west coast of Africa or spend time on land, as good seabirds they are just going to the oceans. For example, we know that the Icelandic puffins that should be here breeding in between these 4 black dots, they are going all the way to Newfoundland and Canada, Charlie Gibbs Fracture, and they spend the whole winter here. But if you are a puffin and you are from UK or from Ireland, you wouldn't do the same. You will stay in the North Sea or move around the Biscay Bay or even go to the Mediterranean area. So even within the same species, we have different seasonal movement and different migratory routes. If we have to talk about migratory birds, of course, we have to talk about the Arctic tern. This is the migratory bird by far. These guys are going from the Arctic all the way from Iceland, from Greenland, Svalbard, North Norway, Europe, and they go all the way down to Antarctica. So they are pretty much in constant summer. I think it's a really great idea. And we also have other birds like the red-necked phalarope, which is not related to it, the tiger king at all. The red-necked phalarope is also very interesting because depending if it's a little bit more to the west or to the east in Northern Europe, it might go to spend the winter time in Panama, in the Pacific Ocean, or it might go to the south of Saudi Arabia and also to the east coast of Africa. So you can see that we have different strategies. And now I'm going to tell you what's going on with the birds that we serve between Kent and Iceland. Of course, I took the reference of the daring dozen, which I think is a very nice name. There are a bunch of them that we are sharing with Iceland, starting from the Brent goose. Curlew, we don't have many, but I will let you know more about that. Sanderling, Dunlin, golden plover, gray plover, lapwing oystercatcher, purple sandpiper, Redshank, green plover, and of course the Ruddy turnstone. So we're going to be talking a little bit about these birds, especially the ones that are in green and in orange, so discovering the migration. This is the structure of the presentation. You're going to have here the name of the bird, the Icelandic reference, if you dare to pronounce, in this case, Dunlin, and the pronunciation should be something like Lothraet, and of course the scientific name. Here you have what is the status according to the International Union of Conservation of Nature. In this case, for Dunlin is decreasing. This raven symbol here is from the Nature Research Center here in Iceland, and it says that Dunlin, the population here is at least concerned because we have around 275,000 birds in Iceland. And this last one here is from the red list of birds in the UK. In this case, we are going to have either red, amber, or green. Red means that it's a reduction of the current population, more than 50%. Orange between 25 and 50, and green is that okay. And you have here a map where is the distribution of these specific species, the Dunlin. in UK. So it seems that Tanglin is pretty okay, 350,000 wintering pairs. So what are the Tanglins doing? Well, they are doing quite a trip. These guys are breeding in the high Arctic. They will go all the way to North Greenland. They will go to the northern steppe of Russia, northern Scandinavia. But what is interesting is what they are doing after. In this study by Lopez et al. In 2008, they compared the haplotype frequency. They pretty much look at the DNA and the genes codes and to discover which bird were going where, because they knew that they were mixing at some point, the one coming from Siberia with the ones coming from the high Arctic in Greenland. And when they are going their migration, this is the breeding ground, and they go all the way down to the south. And it seems that in autumn, in Central Europe, they kind of mix. Winter is the same, and most of the birds that are coming from Greenland, they go all the way down to West Africa. But in UK, what you get is around 25–40% of Siberian dumpling. So Russians are coming to you guys during the winter time. Another member of the Calidris family is the Sanderling, or the Sanderla, which I think is easier to pronounce. The population is kind of unknown, as least concerned and in green status in UK, but we only have 12,000 pairs and around 16,000 pairs in winter in UK. The reason for that is because in Iceland they are pretty much passing by between spring and autumn when they are going to their breeding grounds, and they are wintering in Europe, in UK, or even in the west coast of Africa. In the old times, of course, when we were lacking of GPS and other cool technologies, what happened is that we pretty much have to bring every bird possible with a serial number and wait for someone to recover that. This is a sample of Sanderlings that were ringed in Iceland and where they were recovered. And this is a paper from 1992, so that can give you an idea that this goes quite back in time. These birds were recovered pretty much in UK, but they were traveling all the way down to Ghana. And of course, as we know now that these guys are just coming back and forth in the spring and autumn, just passing by, they don't stay in the winter time. Before we knew what was happening with them, that they were going to the high Arctic, somebody has to look at the clock that they were arriving in the spring to check the direction of the parker that this clock pretty much discovered. And they discovered that from Iceland they were going into the north direction, so that's how they assumed that they were breeding in Greenland.
Rodrigo, the birds are very loud partly.
Okay. I want to scream more or lower the volume.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sorry for that.
No worries.
Okay, so this is the next one. Is that okay now, the sound? Is that okay? Yeah. The purple sandpiper. It doesn't look very purple, to be honest, if you look at the bird, but they have a very tiny band in the wings when they are flying during the breeding time. You can see that little purple, that's how it's called like that. The status is also decreasing, it's endangered in Iceland, less than 15,000 pair, and it's in the red list with amber status in UK. 15,000 pair in Iceland, 13,000 wintering pairs in UK. And these guys are also high Arctic species. I'm gonna lower the volume of every bird now. And this is also a high Arctic breeding species. They will go all the way here in the north of Canada, Greenland to breed. What the scientists have discovered is that there is some difference between those purple sandpipers that are living from Scotland. They will start their trip here in the winter, and they will go in the spring all the way up to Canada, and then come back, stop over in Iceland, and return to Scotland. What they have discovered is not only that they make this curious stopover in autumn, but also apparently the sandpipers that are breeding in Iceland, that means that they're not going all the way to Greenland, are slightly bigger than those coming from Scotland and chasing the high Arctic breeding grounds. It could be a sign that if you travel fast, of course, you burn much more energy. So that's why this purple sandpiper, the Scottish one, probably they are smaller. And this is one of my favorite ones. I'm gonna leave the sound a little bit longer because it sounds really cool. This is the golden plover, a very well-known bird. The population seems to be increasing. It's least concerned in Iceland, but it still has the amber status in UK. You have it the whole year around, and for us, it's slightly different. And it's because this is the harbinger of spring. Believe it or not, every spring we have hundreds of people. If I say 1,000, that will be a lot of people in this country, but few hundred of them are going to the south coast of Iceland, where we have the main golden plover sightings during spring, because the first person to spot a golden plover is going to make it to the news. Every year we have it, put it on the magazine, also the first golden plover and of course, that's nice. That gives you an idea how important is this bird for the Icelandic culture, that is even represented in the highest banknote that we have in the country, in this case 10,000 kronas, which is around 75 pounds. What is interesting is that scientists have been reporting or recording the time of the arrival of the golden plovers, and they have discovered that in the last few decades, it's been the time of arrival has been advancing more and more, around 14 days of difference between 1985 and 2010. That means that the spring is coming earlier, and that has, of course, consequences because of the climate change and also the phenology of these birds later on. Next one, another plover, the ringed plover. I think this one is little and very cute. It looks like the Zorro with the mask here. And the ringed plover of Sandlóa is also decreasing, even though it's least concerned in Iceland because we have 23,000 pairs. It's also listed as amber in UK. You see that you have it pretty much the whole summer, but the story in Iceland is different, of course. Because what we know is that they are coming in summer as well, and they are going all the way down to the west coast of Africa during the winter time. Contrary to what happened with the purple sandpipers, these guys are doing the opposite. In autumn, when they are coming back from the breeding grounds, instead of making a stopover in Iceland, they just go straight. They will go straight to Ireland, to France, to Spain, to UK, or all the way down. But when they are coming back to the breeding grounds, they are taking their time, they are making a lot of stopovers, and it's where we can see most of them in Iceland. This is one of the most annoying birds that you can find in Iceland, the Redshank with the oyster catcher. They are well known because they are making this constant noise, this pee pee pee, that can be heard from quite a long distance. It's near threatening in Iceland because we have, even though we have 75,000 pairs, and the numbers have been decreasing a lot. It's mostly related with agricultural fragmentation and also urban spreading. I will talk about that later on. In UK, you have it pretty much the whole year around. It's a resident species. I'm pretty sure that all of you have seen a Redshank at some point if you take a small walk through the coast. And what we know, these guys, is that the distribution range seems to be pretty much the same. They go breed in the north, they stay in autumn and spring more or less in the center of Europe, and then they will go all the way down. What is also very interesting is that it's been discovered, as it happened with the golden plover, that the lay of the first egg is also advancing. It's happening earlier and earlier each year, also around 10 full days of difference between 1930 and 2010. So that's a worrisome trend because it seems that the spring is coming earlier, and it's probably because the winter is shortening. And why I embrace that, because winter is really cold and dark here. It's a bad sign for birds because that can alter the phenology and also the migratory patterns, and of course the breeding success. One of the last birds I'm going to mention, don't worry, I'm not going to be bothering you all the time with birds, is the Ruddy turnstone. I really like the Icelandic name, Tildra, and it's Arenaria interpres because it's pretty much the sun harbinger. It's also decreasing, even though it's least concerned. It's also considered as a species in amber because the decline in the population. We have around 40,000 pairs in Iceland and 48,000 wintering pairs in UK. And also in the old times, as I explained before, was one of the first species, and they were trying to check where these guys were going before we have GPS or other technology, and they discovered the same, that they were traveling northwest from Iceland, and they spent the summertime pretty much in Greenland and also in the north of Canada to later come back all the way down. What is interesting is that more and more often we can see Tildra or turnstone in Iceland during the winter time. So it seems that they are not going away, some of them, or they are coming from Greenland and they are staying in Iceland for a little bit longer instead of migrating. And that's why this is why when this species is coming in, the oyster catcher, it's seen that it's a step forward from the Ruddy turnstone, and the numbers are decreasing, pretty much the same pattern with the Tildra, with the oyster catcher, 40,000 pairs in Iceland, 340,000 in UK. The numbers have been increasing here, even though it's amber in the red list of birds. But in Iceland, something interesting is happening, and is that they were doing the first winter surveys, and they discovered that oyster catchers, regarding their migratory behavior, are starting to stay in Iceland. Iceland is becoming warmer, even though it doesn't look like that, but I can tell you that we have more rain, milder winters, and around 30% of the population remain in Iceland during the winter time. The scientists are still trying to decipher why is that happening, but it seems that fathers, in this case, the fathers are teaching the little oyster catchers to stay over. It's been proved scientifically that the fathers are the ones kind of changing the behavior of the fledglings, and they tend to stay longer if the father was staying here before during the winter time. And also, as an anecdote here in this map that we have in the bottom right, sorry, this is a map from 1950s, and they were already bringing oyster catchers. You can see that the migration was happening between Norway and UK. It's coming to UK during the winter time and coming back to the breeding grounds in the north during the summertime. And I'm almost done with the birds, and I'm jumping to another species that we share, is the brent goose. The population is very, very unknown because it's a high Arctic species. It's only coming to UK, for example, in the winter, and in Iceland we only see them in the spring and in autumn. The reason for that is because these guys, you can see their distribution range, or their routes that they are following during migration. They have three different populations. Ones that are coming from the Svalbards, they are the ones that you might see up in Scotland or in Denmark. The one coming from Russia are the ones that you see in the UK. And the ones that are coming from the north of Canada or Greenland are the ones that we see in Iceland and also in Ireland. And last species is going to be the curlew, which is a species which is the biggest wader that we have in Europe, at least. It's decreasing, critically endangered. This bird is doing really, really bad. But in Iceland, we only have less than 100 wintering pairs, and it's a resident species, obviously, in UK. But in Iceland, we barely see them. This guy here is not a curlew, it's a windbread, but it's pretty similar. So it's the only photo I have from this guy. The migration from these guys is not north-south, it's more east-west or west-east. So they will stay here and they will, Denmark, for example, and they will go all the way to Russia for the breeding season. So I can give you an idea, as it happened with puffins, with Arctic terns, or with the phalaropes, that every bird has its own strategy and its own migratory route. Of course, these birds are sharing something, and it's the problems that they face. One of the main problems is land fragmentation. We have agriculture, of course, and in Iceland, it's been proved that the higher is the area of cultivated land, especially in lowlands, when we have wetlands, we have lakes, we have rivers, where is most of the food these birds are getting, like insects or worms or crustaceans. The more you intensify the agriculture in those places, the less waders you're going to have. So the diversity is going to be reduced. And in other studies that we have seen, that those who are benefiting, let's say, from the land fragmentation are pretty much those who are able to eat whatever. So omnivores are the ones that are showing a population trend, a positive population trend, while other birds that are going down, like eating seeds or insects, it's seen that they are going down. This is not a pattern that is only restricted to waders or land birds, let's say, but also with seabirds. Since the 50s, we have seen a 70% of decline. So it's seen that most of the bird population are going down. As a summary from the Daring Dozen, you see that 11 are in the red list, classified as red or amber, so it doesn't look very, very good. Only one is in the green area, but I don't want to scream the end is near, even though the scientists have been screaming that for many, many times, for many, many decades, because we have a lot of science telling us that there is much more money put into conservation. We just have the COP26, and people are more and more aware that we need to decarbonize our industry and our lifestyle. So I'm very positive about the future. I really hope that these trends can be reversed at some point. And you have here a horrible list of reference. If you want to take a look later on, just send me an email and I'm happy to share that with you. Here is my contact and my Instagram. So thank you very much for being with me, and I hope that you enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. That was really interesting, and some great photography from Iceland there as well. It's just a very, very impressive looking country, I think. Okay, and then I'll hand over to Beatrice.
Hi, everyone. Rodrigo, that was amazing. There is so much to discuss. I'd just like to say that I'm an artist, not a scientist, and I've been finding out about migrating birds. And I think that some of the things that I've been finding out, I might need to discuss in question time with Rodrigo, because yeah, I think there's a lot more for me to learn. So I will tell you what I've discovered, and then we'll see if it's right or not. So my name's Beatrice von Preussen, and I am a nature artist. I live in Brighton. I'm an illustrator and a printmaker, and I love finding out all about the nature that surrounds us. Here is some of my prints. There's a blue tit and a kingfisher, and those are lino cuts. As part of my job, I work with scientists, and a few years ago, I was lucky enough to be selected to go on a residency to the Arctic Circle. I joined 30 artists and scientists from all over the world on this boat, and we sailed around Svalbard. Svalbard is high up in the Arctic Circle, and it's covered by snow and ice. I was there in June, midsummer, and the ice was at its lowest point, allowing us to sail around the islands in our boat. Now, here's a map of the Earth, and it's from the top. So you can see there in the middle is the North Pole. And if you go south down to the 60 degrees and right a bit, there's the UK. And Svalbard, you can see with my very good arrow there, is really high up near the North Pole. So it's very cold and a very exciting place to go. I saw lots of birds in Svalbard, and the sound of the gulls made me feel right at home. It sounded just like Brighton. Here are some gulls on an iceberg. My favourite birds were the puffins. I'd never seen puffins before, and I just loved them. They're such comical little birds, and they flew alongside our boat, flapping their wings really fast like bumblebees. And I did this picture, which is an etching of the puffins, and I made that on a zinc plate and then printed it onto paper. Now then, migration. Helen, who organised this event this evening, knew that I had been to the Arctic, and she asked me to talk about migrating birds. Fabulous, I thought. I can talk about the puffins and learn more about them. But the first thing I learned was that Svalbard puffins do not migrate to England. They nest in the rocky crevices in Svalbard, and then they spend their entire winter at sea. Here's a picture of me filming some Arctic terns. Now, I know that that is a bird that does migrate, and it does the longest migration of any bird in the world, from the north to the south. I think it's 15,000 kilometers, a very, very long way. But they do not come and live on the mudflats of Kent. So I got in touch with Birdwise to ask which bird might I have seen in Svalbard which migrates to the mudflats of Kent. And Birdwise told me a purple sandpiper. A purple sandpiper? I know what a normal sandpiper looks like. Here's a drawing of one. But a purple sandpiper? I didn't see any purple birds in Svalbard, but they're not really purple. as we saw from Rodrigo, this is a purple sandpiper, and I've put a little measuring stick there so you can see how big he is. It looks grey to me, but apparently it has a purple sheen on its feathers. So what is the purple sandpiper doing in Svalbard? It looks like a pretty inhospitable place. But the truth is that it's a perfect place to lay your eggs. In the summer, the rocky shores and mudflats are exposed and the cold sea is teeming with life for wading birds and shorebirds. There are not many predators, and because it's always light in the summer, those that there are can't sneak up at night and eat the birds and the eggs under the cover of dark. So in midsummer in Svalbard, the sun never sets. And for a very brief time, plants and flowers flourish. I was so surprised to see all this green when I was there. Just over a month, everything burst into life. It was amazing. And there are loads of flowers. All the plants put all their energy into growing for those few weeks of summer, and they are perfect high energy food for lots of visiting birds. At the end of summer in the Arctic, the days get shorter and shorter until eventually it's dark day and night. The temperatures drop and the land and sea are covered in ice. The Arctic in winter is not a comfortable place to be. So all the animals which can fly or swim migrate to other places. Only animals with special adaptations stay in Svalbard, like the Arctic fox and the Svalbard rock ptarmigan. So this is the menu for the purple sandpiper. It eats lots of different things. You can see that it has the small mussels and small crabs and springtails, and it likes to wade around and poke around in the seaweed and get the periwinkles and sea snails, and it eats worms, and in the summer, spiders, flies, leaves, plants, berries, seeds. So it's an omnivore. There would be no food for the purple sandpiper in the Arctic winter. So the most amazing thing that I've discovered about migrating birds, and this is what we need to talk to Rodrigo about, is that they change their diets throughout the year. So in the Arctic summer, food is abundant and they stock up and put on weight ready for their migration. And then they absorb their digestive system. The digestive system takes a lot of energy to maintain, and the birds need the energy to fly on their migration. This is called dynamic guts, and I can't wait to learn more about this from the people who know. So when the purple sandpipers are here in the UK, they're not just hanging out and having a rest. They're actually very busy regrowing their guts, as far as I understand. And that's why it's so important that they're left in peace and they have time to regenerate themselves in their feeding sites here. So the purple sandpipers are on the amber list, which means they're a threatened species. And I know it's sad if any species dies out, but what I hadn't realised is how much of a knock-on effect this could have. It's an ecosystem. Migrating birds are all part of an ecosystem. And because they're migrating, they form important parts of lots of different ecosystems. That's a system where many plants and animals and habitats are linked. And this is where we come back to those plants in Svalbard. You can see these beautiful little, this is a bladder campion, growing there. And you can see the soil is very, very thin. There's not much organic matter. And in Svalbard, the soil is basically made out, it's rock dust. It's made from the rocks which are gouged out by the glaciers. And those flowers bravely grow. And they are part of the ecosystem and they're very important. So here we've got this great diagram. There's the purple sandpiper going to Svalbard to lay eggs. The sandpiper eats the food from sea and land and then spreads droppings all over the land, which enriches the soil. As we know, bird droppings are a great fertilizer. And that enables all that amazing plant growth to burst forth in the summer. And animals such as the ptarmigan need that to fatten up, to live in the harsh winter. and the Arctic fox eats the ptarmigan. So if we lose the birds that are migrating there aren't going to be any droppings. The soil isn't going to be enriched. Those plants won't be able to grow. The ptarmigan will not be able to fatten up and survive the winter, and the Arctic fox will have nothing to eat. So those species are going to disappear. So that is why every bird is important. That's why we need to look after our migrating birds. Every species is part of an ecosystem, and every ecosystem is a delicate balance that we must help to maintain. And that is what I hadn't realized about these incredible birds that are all busy kind of doing their own little lives, going from place to place, but they're all a really important key in all of these ecosystems, which are so important all around the world. So that's what I've learned, and I can't wait to ask you all about that a bit later, Rodrigo. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Beatrice. That was wonderful, wonderful story told, and really wonderful drawings as well. Loved that. And yes, I think we're going to hear a bit about the art of managing a coast like the Kent coast, which is full of people, and about how we can mitigate the interaction between people and wildlife in a way that allows these birds to thrive and to regain the strength that they need to regain and to regrow their gut even. And we're going to hear about that from Greg.
Oh, thank you very much. It's really nice, and thank you for those presentations. They were really good, really interesting. And so what I'm going to be talking about is going to be the East Kent coast and what habitats we have here and what different birds that we do get around here. So I'm Greg, and I'm the engagement officer for Birdwise. We also have Alice here, who is joining us. But I'm going to try and show you all the different sites that we have around here. So our site of East Kent, I don't know if anyone knows, but just so you know, it's between Whitstable Harbour and all the way over to Pegwell Nature Reserve. So all of that site is quite a large area that we cover, and quite a lot of that area is a part of the Isle of Thanet. So the Isle of Thanet used to be an island, of course, but now it is attached. But it has really an amazing different classes of habitats and stuff like that. So the designations that it really has is very important because of either the bird species or the marine environment that we have. So the designations is sites of special scientific interest. So that's a SSSI, a Ramsar site, which is for wetlands. So all the different wetlands that we have. SPA, which is a special protection area. So all of those are actually just one part of Thanet, and plus that's one part of the area that we have here. So the images to the left, the top one shows Thanet and all the different chalk cliffs that we have, the chalk reef and the sandy beaches. And the second one actually shows the area that's only 100 meters away. And this is what we have. We have a huge resident area where there's thousands of people, and that's onto the horizon, that's all houses. And this is actually pointing in the same direction. So eagle-eyed people can actually see that the cliffs are at one side around there. So what we have around here is a lot of different habitats. So on this slide, you can see how we have really nice sandy beaches. So a lot of people love a good sandy beach where they can go and swim, but it's really important for different birds because they have so much food. They house so much food for these different birds when they're traveling over to us and overwintering. We also have the sand dunes, which are very important for other specific birds. So that's really important to show that we do have those as well. And the chalk cliffs. So what's interesting about the chalk cliffs is the soil. So because it's so nutrient, the soil, because of the chalk, that actually gives us a lot of agriculture around the area here. So we get a lot of fields that are around the coast. And that's really important for quite a few different birds. So while they're feeding during the day, they'll be along the coast. but then during the night, where they need to be away from such cold waters and the wind as well, they need a little bit of shelter. So they'll go inland and also rest up. So quite a few birds, such as the Brent goose, the curlew, the lapwing, golden plover, they will all go inland to rest overnight and then come back to the coast to also have some more food while they're there. But while they're out into the farms, they actually do eat quite a few of the crops. So they are seen as a bit of a pest to farmers, but they look beautiful to us. So with so much chalk, it gives the chalk reefs that we have around here is amazing for the bird species. It's one of the big areas that they come to, is because of there's such a marine diversity that we have here. So much food for them. And so it's such good space for them to rest up. They're a little bit further away from humans and different predators. So they'll rest up along these sites, but also they can try and feed along them as well, while they're waiting for different areas to open up for different food sources. One of the big things that we have around is shingle. So we have shingle that runs quite a lot around the East Kent. And this is really good for the summer. So when we do have some breeding birds and ground nesting birds, so that would be probably the ringed plover, and birds like that haven't really got a lot of space because we have so much disturbance, which we will go on to. But because they have so much disturbance, they're not able to actually breed as much. So there is areas where we've got no-go areas, and they have been successful in actually breeding in those areas because there's no human impact onto them, because no one is allowed to go anywhere near, which is awful to have, but it means that we can't actually have that in different areas. So another big one is the salt marsh, and one of the big sites that we do have would be Pegwell Bay, which is the end of our site, and it's the biggest national nature reserve in the UK. And a lot of it is actually going to be salt marsh. And salt marsh is really important to loads of different birds, especially at high tide. So when the tide comes really far in, they're going to be pushed all the way in, because quite a few of them can't actually sit above the water. They don't have the oils to sit on the water, so they need to go inland or to find a place like this where they can find an area that they can hunker down. They can try and shield from the wind, shield from different humans and predators that are there, so they can camouflage. And sometimes there is a bit of food there, so a little bit of food supply. So, but really they're waiting for that low tide to push them all the way out, so then they can go and feed upon the next tide, which is the mudflats. And Pegwell Bay is one massive site, and most of it is put up with all of these mudflats, and it spreads all the way across East Kent. And this is the main part of why all of these different birds love coming here, is because of these mudflats and how diverse they are. So in about a metre square, we can get around 85, so that's a maximum of 85 lugworm in just that area. So that's a lot of food, but that's only one species. There is thousands of different species that we get around here. So that would be a lot of food for all these different birds. So that's why they love these kind of areas, is because of how much food supply there is. And so they can fatten up really quickly for their journey, and to also survive over the night, because it can get very cold for them. So as Rodrigo went over, we've got the Daring Dozen. So this is the birds that we have kind of chosen. It's not all of the birds that we do get along East Kent, it's the ones that we see more significantly or are in dramatic decrease. So the ones that we usually focus on are going to be the turnstone, the Ruddy turnstone, and it is really important, and of course it gets its name from turning stones. So that is why it's called the turnstone. But if we go through them all, if I can remember them, is turnstone, redshank, lapwing, Brent geese, dunlin, oystercatcher, sanderling, grey plover, curlew, golden plover, ring plover, and also the purple sandpiper. So we get all of those around these sites here, and they're making massive journeys. So this is the main sites that you usually get all these birds from when they come only to here, to the East Kent. So some of these species are even flying 3,000 miles in one go. So there is no stopover. So there's no way of stopping anywhere, especially as they can't go above the water and they need land. And so the turnstones are actually those that do that. It's 3,000 miles from Canada all the way over to us in Kent. And so that is a massive journey, and it takes them about 3 days and 3 nights of constant flapping and flying. So you can see why they really need to fatten up when they're here and to be less disturbed. Otherwise, they are not able to fatten up as much. But we could also see how all the different birds that we get around here. So quite a few of them come from Russia, some Scandinavia, the Farne Islands, Iceland, of course, and through to Greenland. So we have many different areas that they come from just to come back to our coastline here. So we've got a couple of surveys where it shows how they are decreasing in the area. So the turnstones, through 1993 to 2020, there was a study, and it shows that there is a significant decrease in the amount that we are getting along the coast here. Even though it does jump up and down, it does fluctuate, it is showing a trend that they are decreasing. So that is not good for the turnstone, and this is many of the birds that we are getting around here, and many of the other species that we are getting along our coast, they are decreasing. So from 2019 and 2020, there was a winter survey that was conducted by Sandwich Bay Observatory, and they counted how many we had along the Thanet stretch of all these different birds. And these numbers show how many we do actually get. But quite a few of the birds that we've already talked about are actually not even on there, even though we do get them. It's because they're not seen as much. That's because of how much they are decreasing. So one of the big things that we think is going to be affecting them, especially how they are going to be disturbed the most, is going to be recreational disturbance. So there are everything else that we can think of. So climate change, we've got loads of other things that can actually affect them. But the big thing that we can do right now is see what we can do about it. And so think about when you're walking your dog, or when you're walking along the coast, how close are you getting to these birds? And if you get too close, so such as the curlew, if you get within 275 meters of them, they have the potential of flying. And when they fly, they don't usually fly for a short distance. They like to fly far away because of how far, how close you are to them. So think about also dogs. We focus on a lot of dog walkers because of how difficult it can be, because some people let their dogs run after the birds, which is not what they want to be doing, because dogs look exactly like the Arctic fox, as we saw earlier. So the Arctic fox are actually trying to get them and try and eat them. So they assume that all the dogs that we have here are doing the exact same. So then they get very scared and they fly long distances to get away from those dogs. So it does really affect them. And if they don't have the time to feed up, to fatten up for their big journey, or they're constantly moving, it's using all of that energy up. So then they're not fat enough to make the massive journey, such as the turnstone going to all the way to Canada. But we also have other things that happen around here. So Pegwell Bay also has a lot of kite surfers, and all across East Kent, because of the northerly winds that we do get, they really like it along the stretch here. So we actually have a lot of that going on, but we're trying to find ways around it. So with both the dog walkers and also the kite surfers, we're trying to find ways around it. So dog walkers can try and walk their dogs around low tide. Low tide is a lot better because they're going to be so much further away, because they're going to be feeding at the low tide mark, and you've got such a big area to walk around in. And if the tide is up really high, then maybe going up on top of the cliff or a little bit further away, or keeping your dog on a lead when you are nearer to birds is a good way of stopping that from happening. So that is it. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Greg. That, I think, pulled it all really nicely together. And I think after listening to Rodrigo's and Beatrice's presentations, we could really imagine how vital it is for these birds to be able to rest and recuperate after these incredible travels they do, and after the incredible hardship of these travels and all the energy that takes up. And very interesting point with the dogs actually looking like the Arctic foxes, and the birds just thinking like, oh my God, they all want to come and eat us now. This is just like full of Arctic foxes here. It's no wonder they're a little bit panicky about that. Thank you all so much. I'm going to end the recording now and open the floor for the conversation.